14, let's call this order, meeting of the West Newbury Selectboard, Monday, October 3rd. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable channels and on the internet. The meeting is also accessible by Zoom. For announcements, the planning board tomorrow evening will be holding a public hearing regarding a proposed zoning amendment. This is somewhat important. This zoning amendment was initiated with the aim of allowing the potential lease or sale of the Soldiers and Sailors building to a private enterprise that could potentially use it as an office. And one of the ways to achieve that would be to have a zoning amendment that would effectuate that in the present residential zone. So this is an important discussion for the town to have. So that's tomorrow at 7 p.m. On Saturday, October 8th at 10:30, there will be a tree walk in the Mill Pond. Lots of different species of trees have been delineated. I think there's small stories about the individual trees in along the trails in the Mill Pond. I haven't got the thing called up right at the moment.
26 trees. Keep going.
I said no. There we go. Okay. This actually says it's starting at 11, so I don't want to give misinformation. So one says 10:30, one says 11.
The walk starts at 11.
Oh, okay.
It is right. I have it 10:30 on my phone.
Yeah, 10:30 is kind of a starting point.
Oh, okay.
And then the walk itself starts at 11.
Okay.
Thanks.
The special town meeting for this fall will be held Monday, October 24th at 7 p.m. in the annex. As usual, there are open positions on boards and committees for the town. Go to westwnewbury.org /volunteer to see what those might be. And finally, for the town agendas, for emails of town agendas and announcements, go to wnewbury.org /subscribe. And there are some Sage Center announcements that I want to go through. There will be at the Sage Center, there will be starting tomorrow, Tuesdays 10 to 11:15, there will be a series of, I guess you would say, lectures, meeting related to meditation, Reiki, and aromatherapy, and those will be for the next 4 weeks on Tuesday. On Thursday there will be a lunch and learn speaker series. This week will be related to veteran services with Karen Tyler. She's very knowledgeable about veterans benefits. So anyone that has questions related to that, she is a person to really talk to about. And on Tuesday the 11th, there will be a outdoor adventure walking group that will meet here and carpool to the walk on the Riverside Trail in Haverhill on Tuesday the 11th and October 26th on the Clipper City Rail Trail. Okay. Back to our next item is application for appointment for Judy Meisner for the Conservation Commission. Judy's been on the commission for quite a while and certainly very knowledgeable on the subject. And I guess do we really know what there was just an oversight in the?
Yeah. So what happened is Judy's requested reappointment was brought forward in the spring of 2021, along with two other committees that she was seeking reappointment to, and the former town clerk Mike McCarron during the meeting pointed out that the date of her then current term on the commission actually went another year till June of 2022. As you know, there was a period of time when the appointment database was bouncing around and wasn't totally reliable. So she had been on for reappointment in 21. Mike during the meeting said, "Oh, her term's not up for another year." So her reappointment was taken off, and the board didn't vote it that night. It did vote the other two reappointments that she was seeking. And then I guess the records in that office didn't get updated. So when we were doing the annual reappointments this past spring, it didn't reflect that her term actually was out at the end of June. So last week when Jim was working with the person who was appointed last week in Concom, he realized the error. We reached out to Judy, invited, confirmed her appointment and her interest in reappointment. And
So does that affect any votes that have been made? I mean, there's probably been none that were decided by your vote, right?
Right.
But
right.
it's
But
certainly not ideal.
Yeah, I think since July 1st, unfortunately, there was a gap.
Yeah.
Inadvertent, of course.
Oh, just from
July.
not from like a year and a half, just from July.
No, just from July 1.
Okay.
So. Fortunately, we have a much better system now for staff or for committee reappointments, but there was a period where it was not as reliable. We had some staffing issues. So.
Okay.
So it looks like this application is from 2000.
Yeah, we
took the
didn't
one from
have her. We didn't want to. We have so many applications on file. We didn't want
Okay.
to do it.
All right, I was just confused.
So we just took an older.
I was like, what does the
application.
personnel committee have to do with?
Yeah, she did send an email
Okay.
confirming her interest.
Okay.
Okay, I make a motion to reappoint Judy Meisner to the Conservation Commission, but just to the end of this fiscal year, to the end of FY23. And
Oh, second.
Discussion.
so I think there are 4 other members on the committee at this point. I think 2 whose terms will end in 2025, 1 in 2024, and now 1 in 2023.
Correct.
Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. Jim, I think you have to swear in.
All the paperwork, so good at that right now.
I want to get you sworn in for your meeting. That's- Next item is update the Rocks Village Bridge, and you'll see in the packet the signage material as well as there was some new information on pavement striping. And
But it's done.
That was intended to be done last night, actually.
It was.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, what
What's
streets?
it look like?
It's there. I mean,
Which streets?
on Bridge Street and River Road. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
It's when you say it's there, is there in capital and in caps underlined and italicized?
And you're interested in historical.
all. I'm not sure what you mean.
Oh, is it?
well, just is it?
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah,
It's very big.
that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Archie, I had forgotten it. So Elisa, she's due up at Concom in a few minutes as well, and she was interested in discussion about the disposition process and the historic guidelines. So I didn't know if you maybe want to jump to that briefly
Okay.
after this. I sorry, I didn't bring that up.
Okay.
So I did send Elisa the materials in tonight's packet, so I didn't know if that helped.
It did, and,
Okay.
and I may leave, but obviously I'm not doing all this, so go ahead.
So she saw it on the agenda and was curious, so, you know, it's really, as you know, I asked town council to kind of sketch out the process, the disposition process. I just wanted to have something on tonight just to kind of keep the conversation going. And Elisa said that the historical commission meets, was it the 10th or the 11th?
What page you got?
The 11th.
The 11th, so.
Oh, no, that's not it.
Oh, you're
I'm
not
not
on
on
it,
it,
okay.
no.
So, they'll, historical
So
commission.
this is item F, we're jumping to item F.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're continuing the review of the historic guidelines, you know, had some good. Oh, I did ask town council the question that came up at the last meeting, and this was not in the memo. But one question that was discussed at last month's
Page 54.
I got
historical
it.
commission meeting was whether, since the town's made the investment in building plans and has, you know, good plans that are bid ready, is that something that the town could require a prospective bidder to implement the plans that we had already drawn up? Is that in a nutshell?
Pretty much, or, you know, use that as the standard, so you don't have to argue that as much. And then if they have a huge reason to depart, then, you know, not withheld unreasonably consent, so, anyway, just to.
So I did ask Sharon to address that in her written advice to us, but she did say verbally that you could do that, a town could do that, but she cautioned that if you make those building plans available to prospective bidders, which she thought was a fine idea, her advice, and she'll put this in writing, is to make sure it's advisory, it's intended to be helpful, but she, and that there's no warranty, that the town is not warranting the design
right,
work. She was, and she'll write that up, but she basically was cautious about, you know, requiring that, but that people who might bid on this might choose to contact some of the same designers, because obviously there'd be some presumably efficiencies if they were to hire some of the same designers to build on the work they've already done. But she was cautious about requiring something, because then the town could inadvertently absorb any liability if something's not designed quite right.
That makes sense.
It'll be interesting to see what she comes up with there in terms of how to tie that together to steer people that way, but not connected.
Yeah, and I also think that part of what I think we're fumbling around with a little bit is, you know, we understand on the back end there's got to be a historic preservation restriction, which is quite detailed and quite prescriptive. We've been informed all along that part of the disposition process ought to include historic preservation guidelines that tell prospective bidders, give them a good idea of what the expectation is, but not in full detail, and what's where it's such a relatively small building. You know, I think that's one of the challenges with these guidelines, is they're, you know, do they need to go further, or do they, that's not something we've really reviewed before, either in my office or at the commission, so I think we're fumbling around.
So company A decides they're at least interested in this, and they get the guidelines. So how? But then after the after there's an agreement with somebody, then they have to get the preservation restriction, and they don't even know what that's going to be. Isn't that going to be extremely frightening to somebody? That
So Sharon said that within the procurement, you would include a sample form of restriction, so that they know.
but it's not the real
No,
restriction.
it's not the real restriction.
Well, but the
So-
guideline should be specific enough to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the idea, is that the guidelines tell people generally what the town's expectations are.
But I guess I don't know enough about the real estate transactions with these kinds of things on them. are people okay with that, or when historic buildings have been rehabbed in other situations, or is it it's going to scare everybody off? I guess that's the question.
Well, that's the way that it's done in other situations. So, I mean, I can't speak to whether buyers are scared off, but that is the way.
So it's always after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that according to Lynn Spencer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it's analogous to the CR, conservation restriction, that you wouldn't have that approved at the time you're acquiring land. You would approve that later. But when the land is being acquired, you have some intent.
But the proposed one is relatively close to what hopefully will actually happen. The final one is what I mean.
The guidelines are
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're thinking we'll lay that out at the next meeting? The timeline?
Yeah, she said she would have something to me ahead of the October 17th meeting.
Right.
Okay.
So I just knew with town meeting coming up that,
There'd
I
be
wanted
questions.
to just kind of keep this front of mind, because I'm sure there will be questions about it. But she did say, in addition to what I put in the memo about her cautioning that MHC can take quite a bit of time to approve the historic preservation restriction, she did also say that in her experience that MHC, Mass Historic, is, they want what they want, that these restrictions are in a very prescriptive form, and that there's not a whole lot of negotiation. Obviously, it's going to be detailed to the building in terms of what are the elements to be preserved, but I think that she cautioned that their form of restriction is not totally negotiable, which I think is fine. But it's the devil's in the details, so we'll see what we would see as we get further into that. But so
to the extent, say that, I don't know, just as a for instance, I'm just curious if someone wanted triple pane windows instead of the existing windows, they might put thumbs down on that.
Who knows? Yeah, but those are the kinds of issues that if the town is inclined to work something out, you're not the only parties to the deal. The Historical Commission of the state has to sign off on everything.
So when you said that she cautioned it takes a fair amount of time, is that months or?
I didn't get a sense of that.
Okay. So then there would just be a purchase and sale agreement contingent on, completion of the restriction? Is that how it would work? Same thing with open space?
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Now you want to go
Back to the bridge.
So yeah, the line stripings, I didn't learn about until this call we had on Friday. They had been sent to Wayne, I think, looks like last Monday. And so at the call, the Zoom meeting we had on this just 3 days ago on Friday, they said they already had a vendor lined up to do the work on Sunday meeting last night. So they were kind of like saying, we want your input, but it's kind of, this is what we're gonna have done. So Wendy, you've seen it with your own two eyes. What's you said they're large?
They're very large and a little bit sloppy. Yeah. So I'm curious whether the residents on River Road will have anything to say, because it's like right out in front of their house, But, I mean, hopefully they'll be effective.
The full width of the road, or?
Yeah. Or on River Road, it's a little bit more than half. On Bridge Street, it's the half, the driving side.
Okay.
Approaching the bridge.
Okay.
It's not actually paint. It looks like some kind of.
It's like an inlay.
Yeah. but some pieces have broken off and are on the side of the road, so I don't
They've
know.
already done that, huh?
I don't know whether that's excess or whether actually pieces have broken off.
You know, I mean, Wayne had talked about one way to put striping down stuff is a thermoplastic,
Mhm.
you know, applique, you know, essentially, you know,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
Sounds
I was
like-
wondering when they plow, isn't that just gonna
Yeah, that's,
rip it up?
yeah, and that's what Wayne
Is
cautioned
it
about.
is it
in
up
advance.
or recessed?
No, it's raised.
It's raised.
Yeah.
Okay, the plow will take it.
It's basically, you know.
Looks like a decal.
Yeah, it's a decal that sticks to the surface, sort of.
Yeah.
But
And
not all
also,
that
and
well.
also, it wasn't that warm last night either.
Yeah,
Probably works better when the tar is heated up a little.
Yeah.
well,
So
that'll
does,
happen next summer.
Okay,
so are they gonna take our input on the signs? Did we get
Yeah.
any feedback?
Yeah. Let's see, so for the most part, I think they're taking the input on the signs. The 5x5, I guess the standard sign size is 5x5.5, and that's how they come. And so, you know, we didn't think that would be a big difference. But a number of the signs, so you can see Wayne's handwritten
Mhm.
notes. These are what he sent following the meeting on Friday. Some he thought were fine as is, and others they agreed they would meet. So where it says, you know, new post, confirm location, he's going to meet them. He's going to meet someone from Mass DOT later this week on site. And I think I was copied on some emails with the time, so I don't know if one of you maybe wants to join him for that, but they were gonna actually go and look at the proposed locations and see if they ought to be adjusted forward or back to make them.
So can you stop on that?
Yeah.
So it says new location, so did they agree to move that
so
sign?
I couldn't figure out whether they
Yeah.
agreed to that or not.
So this one, I think they want it right around here. They didn't like the idea of putting it closer to the bridge itself because they felt that trucks, by the time they saw it, would have already gone past the point where they could easily turn around.
But they could just go down River Road, right?
Yep.
I think the concern was also that traffic on River Road wouldn't see the sign, so are they
Well,
gonna
that
put
was
something
like
different?
that they're not gonna get one.
Yeah, a couple of the residents on River Road commented on that.
I mean, I don't know how many people would be wanting to drive on River Road with a tractor trailer, but
I've seen
I'm
a
sure
few
there's a
recently,
few,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've heard comments from people who live on River Road saying that, you know, there are more than you would expect, more tractor trailers than you would expect that travel that road.
They're probably lost, isn't they?
Right.
So
And so they didn't put one at all at the end of River Road, right?
Let's see, they referred to the diamond sign that's there now, and then the inlaid paving, I think was
Alright.
their solution to give that advance notice with the pavement markings. I do recall them saying during the meeting that they felt that this traffic would be more like delivery trucks than like 18-wheelers.
well, that's true, but
But
if
that
I
cornfield
don't
when-
see why we have to be make it easy for the truck if they've already ignored 5 signs telling them not to go down Bridge Street. Then they're going to have to back up a little bit. I don't have a lot of sympathy for them. It seems to me we're sort of improving the aesthetics of that field there instead of having that giant sign there by moving it way closer to the bridge, and it's also making any potential problems, as small as they are, from River Road being subject to the same thing. it seems if it gets out beyond that house, it's way less of an eyesore.
The thing is that if somebody's on a tractor trailer on River Road, they may already be lost and not have a clue where they are, and in a tractor trailer, and so they get to that intersection, and unless there's really an obvious sign telling them not to go over the bridge.
Well, there is a new one that's going to say don't turn right. There is that.
Oh, okay.
You're going to come down River Road, and smack in front of you is going to be a sign that says
I didn't see that in the
don't
package.
turn. Yeah,
I don't
right
remember
here.
that sign.
I saw it yesterday.
Okay.
I was looking for it and I didn't see it.
Yeah, that was page.
Oh, that's on Ferry Lane. Right? That's on Ferry Lane.
There's another one.
Okay.
Oh, this one here, this page.
That's it. So you're coming down River Road, and
Oh, okay.
it says don't turn right.
Oh yeah, it's past all the measurements.
All vehicles over 12 feet 6 must turn left. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Well, it's just why did they ask for input if they're going to ignore what we say? That's
Well, they did give us that.
Well, but we also asked to not have that
I
big
know.
sign
I'm
over there.
not.
And that was a lot of people that wrote in to comment also said the same thing, that they would like that big sign to be closer to the bridge with the bar.
So Angus, I was looking at something up. When did you say Wayne was gonna?
So I know that I think I saw some emails going around looking for a time. They were looking to meet this week, so I'll find out when. I know that for the sign that would overhang the road, that they would need to do some testing before they pour the foundation and all that. So they have to have it ordered, manufactured, and all that. It's not like it's going to happen right away. So I think if you want to kind of reiterate that point more strongly, I don't know what they'll.
It can't hurt if
can't hurt.
it.
But so that's a town road, right?
Yeah.
Where's the sign that all vehicles over 12 feet 6 inches must turn left? I don't.
It's at the end of all that, Rick. Keep going
Page
past
It's
30.
all that.
embedded within an email thread. It's not a separate.
Page 34.
It's not a separate file. Page 30,
Okay.
34 of the packet.
Well, Angus, when you find out, like, I would.
Oh, okay.
I would try and get away from if
Yeah.
I can, or any of us, if
I can't do it, but I think one of us should be there.
yeah.
What time is it again?
Well, we don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know.
And it'll be this week? Or
That was, I know last week Wayne said that he had time this week, and it sounded from the call on Friday that they were going to try to do something this week. And all I'm seeing is something that says they would have someone contact him, so I'm not seeing that there was a specific time.
well, I don't know what your flexibility is. Maybe when Wayne finds out, you can let us know, and then, Wendy, I know you said you can't go. I might be able to. Sounds like you might be able to. And
Well,
maybe-
I'll just, if I can, I'll just cancel a patient or something, and one of us should try.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Might be confusing when there's a sign that says when flashing, don't turn on right. And if the signs are flashing, some people might just take it right.
Yeah,
It's meant for like if the bridge is up,
yeah.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
but you're telling me that somebody's not gonna pull up to that section, look at that sign, it says don't turn right when flashing, they'll look at the sign ahead of them, lights aren't flashing, they'll just go.
Yeah.
Especially if they're lost on River Road to begin with.
Right.
Which is the whole problem.
they
send,
probably would
I
be,
can send
they
everyone
probably
this
would
list,
nail some trees on River Road at that point.
Yeah, I can send them a note that there's, continuing concern about the location of the over street sign. And then, are we down to that issue? Is everything else,
Yeah, and just the potential for confusion at the end of River Road.
Yeah.
But if that sign was moved there, then we could take both of those other signs down, maybe.
Still every sign.
That's just gonna look,
Yeah, the thing is, at some point, it's
in
gonna
your
really be
face.
an eyesore, and I know that residents who live in the area are gonna be unhappy, because, they're gonna feel, rightly so, that like they're living on an interstate.
Storrow Drive.
Yeah, right.
okay.
So we could deny them the ability to place it there, right? If we have jurisdiction over town roads?
Yeah, I mean, we.
Yeah.
Asking the question?
We could, and I guess,
we could.
and then we hope that we get something better in return, rather than them just throwing their arms up in the air and saying, okay, we won't put a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are still gonna be chains on the sign that's on the bridge? Could a bar be put on there instead of chains?
I thought, didn't we want chains?
Yeah, I'm just saying if you're right and they don't put a sign because we didn't like the location,
Yeah.
When you say a bar, what do you mean by a bar?
like the bar that's
Like a
hanging
straight
down for
bar.
there.
So
A
it's
striped
got
bar.
just chains. Because right now it's just dangling chains
Yeah.
off of the first sign of that first
Yeah.
span.
We kind of don't want them backing up on the bridge. That's like the last resort.
The only thing we don't want more is for them to keep going forward on the bridge.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I think the chains were the compromise because the fear was that the historic commission would not approve.
Okay,
Right.
so who did Wayne write that, or
Yes.
did DOT write
No, that's
that?
Wayne.
Oh, that's Wayne wrote that, okay. Okay,
All right, I'll send them some correspondence and let them know that, we're not happy about the location of this sign.
And the consensus seems to be that we would prefer to have it past River Road, between the end of River Road and the bridge.
granted, there isn't a lot of space there, but
No.
there is some space,
There's
yeah.
enough that they could back up.
Yeah,
Right. I'd rather have somebody have to struggle with backing up around a bend in a difficult location than continuing on and whacking the bridge again.
Mhm.
Okay.
so, just on the, related to the bridge, I know, when it first happened, we were, there was some discussion as to whether, the trucking company that was responsible for the damage, could the town or the district receive some kind of damages for example, the district has quantifiable increased costs due to time lost and increased transportation costs and so forth for the buses. And what we had heard back was that the damages to the bridge were so significant that any insurance policy they had would have chewed up all their insurance proceeds. But this said that the damages were in the neighborhood of $2 million. So if someone has a trucking a trucking company, seems like they would have an umbrella insurance policy on top of their regular liability policy, and usually those are 5, 10, or 50 million. So it seems like there would be some additional insurance money that could be available. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know. This doesn't give the final number of the cost of the bridge. It probably hasn't been determined yet, but the repairs. But it actually wasn't.
Well, I thought it said
It
12
wasn't
million.
as much as I thought.
That was the original work.
That was in 2014.
Oh,
Yeah, those are 2014 dollars for the rehabilitation of the bridge.
So far the 2022's damage was about $2 million, they said.
But Archie, I think part of what I'm hearing you say is it seems like DOT is focused on their losses, not losses others might, or have occurred, such as Pawtucket.
Right, but I don't know who I talked to, but they said don't even bother. There won't be any money left whatsoever, and it seems like there certainly could be money left over. If it's a large trucking company, I can't believe that they just had a policy that ran out at $2 million or something. That just doesn't make sense. Because trucks can cause a lot of problems. I don't know.
So
Just throwing that out there, it might be.
I think it's a really valid point, Archie. The question is who reaches out. I mean, so I don't think West Newbury, we're able to quantify.
I don't think we
Obviously,
have
there's damage.
enough actionable. No.
Right, but either Pawtucket or Whittier might have quantifiable damages that they could pursue, and I think maybe we want to point that out to them.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there's anything that we can do.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, and certainly.
I mean, we haven't had any police details or anything like that. So no.
Yeah. So I probably recall this wrong, but I seem to recall that somewhere reading something that the truck was actually owned by an independent, by a private contractor who was working for a larger trucking company. I could be completely wrong
that
about
law
that,
remembers
but I
that.
thought that. So there actually may be two entities that carry insurance.
Well, there may be probably
Yeah.
one
The
little
carrier.
one and one
Yeah.
big one. Yeah.
Right.
So Angus, why not just give the Whittier and Pawtucket a heads up? Just maybe
I did to Pawtucket, a couple of months ago back, to recommend that they track their costs. But yeah, I can reach out.
I'll call Greg up.
Yeah.
All right.
Greg
What?
LeBrecq.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially during the spike in fuel costs at the time.
Yeah. That couldn't have been a worse time.
Right.
Okay. Draft warrant for the special town meeting Monday, October 24th.
So I did find there is a typo that I fixed in this, and because it still says behind outdoors next to the annex instead of in the annex. So I changed that.
Are we on C or D?
We're in, so if
C
you
is
look
just
at the
the-
one in D, it's correct in C, it's not correct in D.
Got it, okay.
So I corrected this version,
Okay.
and you must have pulled an older version.
So
Okay,
C
yeah.
is the good one.
Well,
Well,
No.
see,
No?
that's the correct language for the indoor
Okay.
as opposed to the outdoor, which
Yeah.
is in the.
yeah, and then the only other thing, I was looking back at the fall of, a couple of years ago, and it had the headings of the, I think it said general government, appropriations, and then bylaws, others, you know, the heading that Mike would put in. So I did make that change. I don't know if you have access to the server, but I saved a new version this morning with that formatting, if you like that. It is organized that way. The first, the general government would just be the Article 1, appropriations would be Articles 2 through 12, and then 13, 14, and 15 would say bylaws /
Do we have any, does anyone have any thoughts about the order that they like or don't like, or?
It's not funny to computer.
I didn't see the,
I
That was
didn't
really an
see
issue.
anything, no.
I mean, hopefully we don't have a problem with the quorum.
Hang on, I thought there was, oops, I lost the play. One of the votes, I wasn't sure what
These votes won't go in the printed warrant. We
No, I know.
Just keep a score.
But they'll be in the booklet, right?
Yeah.
And FinCom, I think, just circulated the latest version.
I got 3 versions since Friday. So I told them I would look at it Tuesday. So
Tell me when you're done.
busy with other stuff. So. But yeah, I'll look at that tomorrow. Yeah, there's one that came in at 5:41.
No, those are okay. No, it wasn't that. It was, I think it must have been in one of the minutes. Okay. So, everyone's good?
Yeah,
Okay.
So do you want to sign the warrant tonight before you leave?
sure.
Or just?
Sure.
Okay, all right.
So that one.
So right after the meeting, we'll print how many copies. What do we think? We just
Minimum 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I usually do 10.
10's too many. Every 7.
Okay. I'm usually drowning in warrants in my
Yeah,
office.
yeah. 10's
Better warm up our signing wrists. My tendonitis, you know, it's like.
So if you just delete this and this and this, hang on, yeah, you're correct.
So I guess we need a motion.
Oh, okay. I think we
Right?
do.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I move that we approve the warrant as shown,
As revised?
yeah, as revised in the packet for tonight's meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Item E, a few weeks ago, some interested people from West Newbury, Groveland, and Merrimack suggested looking at the Nantucket Regional Agreement every 3 years in the agreement, there is a process whereby the agreement can be relooked, can be looked at to possibly be changed or not changed. And if there is a need for a change, then it has to go to town meeting in the 3 towns in the spring, and then in order to finalize the change of the agreement, and that would go into effect in the next fiscal year, and then it could not be changed for another 3 years, unless we wanted to change that section of the agreement on how often it gets changed. So I attended the meeting, and there were a lot of comments that, especially it was felt in this past budget year, that the time for commenting on the budget and was sort of constricted, and that communication between the district and the towns wasn't as perfect as everyone would like it, and so one of the things that was felt is to start discussions with the district and the member towns earlier in the year, not formal, not any necessarily even any dollar figures, but just the philosophy of how the district was planning to achieve the budget in the forthcoming fiscal year. So everybody at this meeting a couple of weeks ago felt that, yeah, let's do that earlier, and earlier in the year, perhaps like even in November. And additionally, we all felt that it would be a good idea to do things in a joint manner, instead of having to have the Pawtucket administration do the same dog and pony show to 3 towns, or even 6 times, doing a FinCom and then a select board or whatever it is, and to have a larger meeting where, with the respective boards and committees from the 3 towns together, and a lot of the same questions could be answered at once rather than 3 times, and maybe there could be more of a consensus on how the towns felt about the budget collectively, rather than just dealing with how West Newbury felt about things in a vacuum, not knowing how the other towns felt about it. So there wasn't anything huge that people wanted to change, but everyone did feel that it wasn't a waste of time to try to make a few substantive changes in the agreement this year. So that's about it. So what we'd like to do, at least as far as West Newbury goes, is have the FinCom have some thoughts about what they like or don't like about the regional agreement, for them to the select board in a few weeks, and then we can hash through those, and so that the FinCom and us and Angus and anyone else that in the town that would sort of have a united position on things we would like to change, and that we bring our united front changes kind of to other two towns and see if we can mesh things. But it'll be chaotic if there's 2 or 3 different changes that don't agree in our town, and then we're trying to coordinate with 2 other towns. It'll just be chaos. So we have to sort of solidify our position and then see what Groveland and Merrimack have to say.
What was the time frame again to implement changes? I know you said that, but I know it's in here in the document. I read it earlier, but I don't recall.
Well, what we do now can't affect this year. It would have to start in June 1st of 2023.
So that would be the 3-year, would begin in 23? The 3-year term of this agreement?
This one, it seems like it's actually I was a little unclear at the timing of this one because the actual agreement is dated 2019. So are we actually in the 4th year, or I think we might be like 1 year even out from that. But I don't think anyone would object to us doing it in a longer period. It's just that you want to keep it
more frequently.
You don't want to have it shorter because then there's chaos.
Right.
You keep changing it all the time. But any changes we make now couldn't be effective this year because the game has already started.
Right.
When you say this year, you mean the current fiscal year that we're in.
Correct.
But it would, we would essentially vote on it at Springtown meeting, and they would become effective
In June.
for FY20 in June or in July 1st.
That's what June 30th. Yeah,
June 30th.
that's what
Okay. Yeah. So for FY24.
And if you read the advisory board as it was written, as it was changed in 2019, that was after the district had sort of been not in receivership, but we'd had the problem financial issues, and that for some reason the agreement was doing away with the larger group of people that encompassed having representatives from FinCom and select boards in the task force, and Angus had made the point that it was putting a lot of burden on just the people in his position to be the intermediary and be the only person communicating the information back and forth between different boards and the school administration, and that it would actually be a little better to go back to having a larger board, yes, but with people that are going to have to make decisions about it anyway. So my feeling was we should sort of go back to the way it was. If you look at the red line version of the changes before the 2019, to sort of go back to the composition of the committee that would sort of revisit the changes, but also revisit the budget every year and make comments before the final budget was brought to the towns. And everybody agreed that there just isn't as much communication as there used to be. I mean, it seems that, I don't know, and maybe it's somewhat our fault. We should invite the school committee members into our meetings, or so that they know so we can get some information directly from them, and they hear what we have to say, to sort of be more in direct communication with our representatives on the school committee. I think that we used to do that more, and it just seems like the last 4 or 5 years that isn't happening as much. Everything, I think the budgets will be, people will be, whether the budgets increase or not increase or whatever, but it's not that, again, knowledge is power, and there was some feeling that certain questions weren't being answered maybe perfectly to some people at this meeting I was at a couple weeks ago, and people from the other towns sort of agreed that there wasn't such a great communication this year. But COVID had changed things. But now we can go back to having meetings. Okay, so
I had some questions.
Yeah.
On section 8, Angus, this is about maintenance of the schools and the capital. Do we have a 5-year capital plan for the page?
Not from the school. We have made efforts to build out our
own
capital plan, right? And that's one of the things we talked about a good bit at last Tuesday's daytime meeting. Was first that we'd like to get their capital proposals earlier in the cycle, because to receive them with the budget, which is right now it's just a tab within the budget binder, it's way too late for anything in the subsequent fiscal year. We need to have known about.
Right, but it's
January
supposed
15th.
to be annually updated. Yeah.
Right, and the second is that it's not 5 years, it's 3 years, and that typically includes the current year. So last year's included FY 22, 23, 24, so it was really only 2 years out when we received the FY 23 proposed budget. And then the third thing is it's just not of a level of detail or completeness, which is, which matches what we do on the town side, and it also omits things that we have, there's some continuing ambiguity over what's truly a capital item. So, the example we always refer to is this, it was a kitchen apparatus that they brought forward back in 2018, and members of the FinCom at the time were really agitated, feeling that wasn't a capital item, but the district felt strongly that it was, and a literal reading, I think they were right, but it was, I remember at the time saying, we're not, in our capital program, we're not projecting future costs for this was a piece of equipment in the kitchen that I think keeps the meals warm, like after they're prepared but before they're served. But it was over $10,000, it was over 5 years, and they made the case that it was kind of inherent to the kitchen. It wasn't like equipment.
It wasn't built in.
Yeah, and there was similar discussion last week with regard to phone systems in the schools and whether that's equipment or whether that's capital. And right now there's ambiguity, and we can argue over that. And we need to make sure that one way or the other that the towns and the school are speaking the same language, so we know what's our responsibility and what's theirs. And right now, I think it's subject to some interpretation.
Ultimately, we did pay for that item, but there was a lot of time wasted arguing about it.
It was, yeah.
And so do they provide us with a maintenance plan for the building and their annual report?
That's something that none of us, myself nor Carol nor Rebecca, ever remembered seeing. At the meeting we had last Tuesday, Greg LeBrec said, it's in the binder. And honestly, I haven't gone back and pulled the binder to see, but we all felt like if it's in there, it's not. Like none of us were aware of seeing it. It's not something and that's one of our critiques of when we get this binder everyone's focused on what's next year's budget number. Everything else gets lost because it's it's the time of year that we get it is right around when we're trying to finalize our budget, and there's just
It's
million
too much
things
to
it's
go
Too
through.
much.
It's you know, it's 200 pages.
Yeah, so people focus on, well, what's next year's assessment, and everything else gets lost.
I don't recall ever seeing any reference in advance of capital items for.
No, it's not, it's just within the binder.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, this is clearly laid out in the existing agreement. I feel like we ought to hold them to what the agreement is already.
Yeah, that sentiment was definitely expressed, you know, at the meeting in August and again last week. And I think that's that's very true, yeah.
So if it was January 15th for for that whole section, is that early enough?
No.
Or it needs to be earlier than that?
On the capital side, it really.
So what date?
I guess, I mean, if it's truly a 5-year plan, and what we're learning about on January 15th is maybe
The
that's the first
updates.
time we're being, the updates,
Yeah.
but it's already something on our list, we just don't know if it's being funded for next year or not, then I think January 15th would be okay, because it's on our radar, but to learn about something new that we didn't even know about on January 15th would be kind of late. It wouldn't necessarily be too late, but it would be 2 weeks before roughly we'd have to either put a warrant article on or not, so that's not a lot of time.
Yeah, so maybe it would be good to separate these items from the budgeting stuff so that they can't just put it as a tab in the budget. You know, maybe November something is a better date or December. I don't know.
I mean, under our capital policy, not our bylaw, but under the policy that was adopted back in December 2018 based on the DOR model policies, I'm responsible for bringing forward a capital program by November 1st. In prior years, that hasn't happened. It's been later than that. This year, I am working to do that, and I think it will be ready to start the capital committee process by November 1st. So, and within that, I'm working with individual department heads on what do they need for next year. So, we'll get what we can from Pawtucket for anything they're anticipating for next year. But if we learned about something new in January, it would be kind of late.
So maybe November 1st is a better date?
That might be, I don't know if they could commit to that, but it ought to, there's no harm in asking.
And I think the date should be added for the year-end maintenance report and the maintenance plan. Otherwise it will just get lost.
Well,
in
the
budget.
maintenance report should be done in the summer of this year.
So year-end, that means fiscal year-end?
This is the year end.
It just says year-end. It doesn't say fiscal or calendar.
But it is the fiscal year end report, because they've got the invoices. So this is what we fixed.
Okay.
So if you're getting it, I was assuming that should be in August or September or something.
Okay. Maybe we can just add the date there. And I agree about changing the 10,000 for capital, the threshold.
Yeah, and there's another section that everything itemized at $1,000 and $1,000. That's just, again, you get lost in that makes it too much.
That was the maintenance plan, or what?
No,
that was section
that's
12.
section 12A2.
That was the budget, right?
All
Specify.
items costing $1,000 or more need to be itemized. That's just too much.
So we're gonna have comments from FinCom for the next meeting, or?
Not for the next meeting. Their next meeting is the joint meeting 2 weeks from tonight. And then the week after that is town meeting, and then they are scheduled to meet on November 1st. I did tell them when they met on Thursday that November 1st is a school committee night, and that wants to present to the school committee basically this kind of state of the town, or state of the school that we talked about, which would be intended to be kind of taking the spirit of what we've asked of starting the budget process sooner, not the formal budget process with numbers, but to talk about how the prior year closed out and what are the issues that they see on the horizon as they look to FY24 budgeting. Because he knows a lot of the issues. Obviously, the energy costs are going to be a budget driver for them. He's talked about the insurance costs of the new middle high school being about a $200,000 increase from the current year. He's talked about some other things like special ed and transportation costs, and some of the trade-offs that he feels may need to be made if there's not an operating override past next year. So what I told him at the meeting last Tuesday, and he was just going on and on, I said, if you just sat with our boards and FinCom and just tell them everything you know, that's going to be really helpful so that they understand the problems that you're seeing. And so I think, we didn't lock in on a November 1st date, but they were looking at their calendar, suggesting that if he presented something to the school committee and each of the 3 towns invited all of the boards and the select boards and the FinComs and really made that like an important date to be at that meeting, that could be a really good thing to get everyone all in one place. So that wasn't firmly pinned down for November 1st, but it could be that night. So if that's that night, then the FinCom will have to change its date.
Okay.
But they don't have any other meetings scheduled at this point. So I think if you wanted their input by a certain time in order to meet the timeline that you want for this regional agreement, you could definitely, we could communicate that to them and they could add a meeting. Right now, I think, Walt, who's been who went to the one meeting back in August, is, I think, kind of gotten ahead of everyone on his committee who's just kind of learning about this, or they may know, but they've been focused on obviously the special town meeting and the FinCom booklet and the rationales. So Chris, while as chair, has been, he hasn't been putting this topic on the agenda because it's not really the timing.
So when do we need to get feedback together?
Well, what I told them on Thursday
I don't
is
know.
that, if there's something that's gonna, if the expectation is there's something going to the Springtown meetings in all 3 towns, you're gonna need a pretty good idea of what you're talking about by right around the end of the calendar year to allow some time for that to be, fine-tuned a bit and still make the warrants in all 3 towns.
So,
I mean, you've got meetings on November 7th and November 21st. FinCom's scheduled to meet on the 1st, assuming nothing changes. So if they had their advice to you prior to your November 7th meeting, that would seem to be enough time.
yeah, that's fine.
Not a lot of extra time, but I think it'd be enough time.
And then if there's a conflict with the other meeting, that would just add a new meeting?
Well, I think they would, their November 1st meeting, they might need to move.
Okay.
But your November 1st meeting, or 7th, I'm sorry, your November 7th meeting is set.
Right, so I'm just saying, if they had to move their meeting, then
Yeah.
the 14th would be, or the 20,
Yeah, or hopefully they can find a different date that week.
okay,
So it didn't slide much.
okay.
I'll talk to Chris Weil and let him know that timeline.
Too long. So, next, we've already done F, so, Angus, were you gonna discuss the, projects pending and
Sure.
potential list? You
Yeah.
wanna go do that now, or you think not?
It's up to you. It's up to you. Yeah, we could start that now, but I mean, I put together, you know, a list of things. You just got it a short time ago, so I don't know if you want to have some discussion of that now, or you know, even if each of you. pick the top six or top
I have
eight.
an idea. Let's spend like 2 or 3 minutes and just see if there's anything on here that we don't know what it means. And
That's a good start. Yeah.
and then we can ask Angus what. But otherwise, I have to think. I can't go through all this and think about it. But at least we know what the definitions are.
You, but I have a hard time looking at any of this as anything but important. I mean,
I know.
that's the problem we have is that it's all important. But I will say, looking back from February to today, there were things we could cross
Yeah.
off that happened on time, so it's not like we're.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone have questions about what's certain? I have a few, but
We just need 1 more minute.
okay. When did you want to start with?
I just had a question, a possible addition on number 4, DPW projects list.
Yep.
Would the reorganization of the select board office be a project that DPW needs to be involved with? Or that, those two offices?
Yeah, I kind of, when we refer to hearing room improvements, I kind of,
Okay, so
but
that's
that, I'll make that explicit, because that's definitely, it's not quite the same thing.
okay. That was the only question I had.
Rick?
I guess, I got two things so far. I didn't get through the last page, but, item Z in finance and administration, which is last on the list, but I'm trying to refresh my memory. We'll be able to amend 2005 statute creating.
It's a housekeeping item.
Okay.
So what it is, so when the Town Manager Act was approved, so prior to 2005, there had been a highway department. In 2005, there was special legislation to create a DPW. Among other things, that legislation designates the Select Board as the appointing authority for DPW director and staff. In the draft of the Town Manager Act that was sent to Beacon Hill for approval, in the preface, it repealed the 2005 DPW statute, but as approved on Beacon Hill, it did not. That was removed on Beacon Hill. We don't know why. So that's something McCarran had brought to my attention 4 years ago, and I just made a mental note. Okay, at some point, and I remember, and Archie will remember this because he was on the board, when we got Gary Bill's retirement letter, and I went to the board in terms of the appointing authority for the new director, and I said, the statute's still on the books. And they said, well, we meant to repeal it, and we agreed that I would do the interviews, I would bring forward a candidate, the board would vote it, but we acknowledged that statute's still on the books. So it's a housekeeping item, it's not there's a reason it's letter Z.
Yeah.
But it is still hanging out there, and I think there's a couple of things in here, including, change from Board of Selectmen to Select Board to make that legal. That, there's a couple of things or more that I think would benefit from special legislation. And so rather than go through all that for one thing, it would make sense to try to get maybe a couple of things or more done all at once. So.
Why someone or several people in the legislature wanted to do that, we don't know.
It most likely was just House Counsel. What ends up happening a lot of times is the legislator sends it to House Counsel or Senate Counsel, and they do whatever they do, and they hand it back to them and say, this is what will pass. So it sometimes isn't even the legislature or a legislator who doesn't like the language.
Right.
Sometimes it's just the council of them, and they have a reason
Oh,
for
okay.
it, they just don't express whatever that reason is.
I assumed that
Maybe
there
House
was
Counsel
an
just wanted to
individual
personalize it.
legislator that didn't like it for some reason.
Yeah, well, and it could have been that too. And
Well, most of the home rule petitions are pro forma. They just kind of whatever the town wants, they usually get, unless town council or House Council or Senate Council has a problem.
yeah, it's interesting. At one point, Mike McCarran showed me, like, this is what we sent, this is what came back, and it just, that preface, and it was the first or second line of the entire thing was gone. And he said, this is, when it came back to us, this was removed. We didn't really know why, and they moved on. But it's been on my list ever since.
If I had to guess, I'd say it was a mistake, that they didn't mean to delete it and somebody messed up.
Or they didn't like the preface, that it was in the preface, and they wanted it in the body, and they just didn't move it over.
Yeah, who knows?
So, okay, so I had one other question. Under finance and administration, item P, use of winter recovery, the RAP funds by end of FY23.
Yep.
Coupled with 4A, DPW projects list, roadway paving. Isn't that sort of the logical application of those
Yeah,
funds? Because
yeah,
I think when we looked at that, there's
Correct.
really nothing else in town
Right.
that we can logically apply those funds to.
And that's probably true.
Yeah.
And it's been described as analogous to Chapter 90 monies. So it'll probably just be put toward the paving program.
Yeah, okay.
So it may not, it's not necessarily a big work item. some process we have to go through, but Wayne's doing that, that's really not a big deal.
Rick, anything else?
No, that was
Okay. I didn't know in finance and administration, G as in Godzilla, I didn't know what tailings were.
That's when when we cut checks and and the check becomes stale, at some
Okay.
point that needs to be removed from the books as no longer,
Okay.
so we do it, just to be clear, we do it, we just we never adopted the formal policy.
Okay, okay.
But Caitlin does that. Prior to Caitlin, that was not getting done, and that's part of why they could never get things to reconcile.
Right.
Because there were a lot of stale checks that were still showing up on the ledger. Caitlin does that really well, we just haven't adopted the formal policy that sets out how that's done, so.
Okay. And ensure consistency among capital bylaw policy and practice. So I don't know what you're kind of driving at there.
Well, so you'll probably remember this.
And
Page 2, letter N of the capital
page
bylaw
2
policy.
near the top, yeah.
Okay.
So, back in, so there are things in the Town Manager Act that vest some responsibility in my office for capital planning, and also the capital policy that was adopted, that came out of that DOR Best Practices Grant that was adopted in December 2018, basically vests responsibility in the town manager for bringing forward a capital program annually. The Capital Improvements Committee bylaw really envisions the Capital Improvements Committee
Okay.
the capital planning process. So you'll remember, Archie, that back in December or so of 2018, Joe Anderson said at some board meeting, he said, oh, we really ought to propose amendments to the Capital Improvement Committee bylaw this cycle. And by that point, I had already met with Dick Preble, who was the chair, at least once, maybe twice, and told him, we're just gonna follow the same process this year to get a sense of how it's working. And so I remember I told Joe at the time, I said, Joe, I already met with Dick and told him, like, we're gonna follow their process. If you were intending to propose amendments to that bylaw, you really need to let me know, because I didn't want to then be like, oh, sorry, Dick, I know what I told you a couple of weeks ago, but now we're proposing to amend the bylaw. And so we agreed. It wasn't timely at that point. But we have a policy that was adopted that came out of the DOR.
Okay.
We have a bylaw that's not fully consistent with that policy. And then we have actual practice, which isn't necessarily fully aligned with either. So
Gotcha.
we kind of
Okay.
need to get clear.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not that hard to accomplish.
And
no.
actually, I mean, there's a really kind of example from today, or from the, that helps to illustrate this, which was the question that came up on Thursday from the FinCom member about the Green Communities Grant, the proposed HVAC improvements to the COA, with the town match now being proposed at $25,000 and a useful life of more than 5 years. Is that a capital project? And if so, what does that mean? Should that have been submitted to the capital committee? And that's kind of an ambiguity. Or if you read the bylaw literally, the answer would be yes, it's a capital project. But that's not what the board had no one had kind of anticipated that. So about 1.5 years ago, and it might have been 2.5 years, I don't recall, I put together some redlined revisions to the capital bylaw. I didn't ever bring it to this board. I brought it to the capital committee to say, hey, what do you guys think? They weren't well received, so it kind of didn't go past that meeting, but I think they made some sense. What they were intended to do was to better define the capital committee's responsibilities relative to the use of stabilization funds specifically, not, for instance,
Something that would be funded outside stabilization.
like the operating budget, for instance, because if you read the capital committee bylaw literally, it could suggest that you can't expend money on engineering or
Anything,
appraisals
right.
without it going through capital committee, which would be really, would really kind of grind us to a halt. So I think it needs to be sorted out and clarified, and it's not.
And there was
you know,
always, there
it's
was
not rocket
always,
science, but it's not like an hour
but,
of work. It's a
no,
process.
but it needs
It does need
clarification.
clarification.
I mean, and
yeah.
it is, about 10 years ago, there was actually a warrant article to get rid of the capital improvements committee, because it was getting kind of crazy, like, why is a water project being evaluated against a school project? The money doesn't come from the completely
Right. And that's been
diametrically.
brought up, I believe, in every cycle that I've seen. You know, why are you rating these on the same list when they're coming, some are coming from water, some are coming from.
I know.
And they continue
So
to do it.
it is kind of archaic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well,
So
I'm not even sure it's archaic. I mean, I just think it's wrong that, I mean, it's, the capital improvements committee should be concerned about things that are coming out of the state, money coming out of the stabilization fund, in my mind, period.
I know, but I totally agree. And you would rank buying water meters versus the fire department buying a truck. There's no real
You're not
reason to
competing
even
with
do
one
it.
another for funding.
Right.
They're seeking
And there's any,
Or
and
even, I mean, let's say let's use this Green Communities grant example. Let's say the match was gonna be 19,000, so that was a non-issue. But the actual value of the improvements are much greater than 20,000. Is that a capital project, notwithstanding how much is actually coming from the taxpayer? I mean, we have things on the capital project list that may end up being grant funded, but they're still capital projects. So there's some nuance there.
yeah,
You know, I'd rather deal with on a rainy day than when there's some project that's potentially held up because someone's like, oh, that should have gone through this process. And, you know, among other things.
that has happened.
Yeah, the capital bylaw says that for projects considered for a special town meeting, they have to be considered 4 months ahead, or submitted 4 months ahead. And just last fall, we had 2 capital items on the fall. One, I think, was a backhoe, I think, for DPW, which because of supply chain and lead time issues, Wayne had intended to bring forward in the spring, and he said, we can't wait till spring, because if we want it for winter of 2022, where we are now, we're gonna need to order it last fall. So we had to submit it to capital, go to capital last fall, which was fine, it went fine. But if they had held us to the 4 months, we wouldn't have met that. So it's right now, I think it's you know, it's not been a huge problem, but it's the kind of thing that's a little messy, and I would rather get it squared away before there's some crisis where all of a sudden, you know, someone takes a very literal reading to the language and it could become a problem.
No, that was one of the reasons for, there was also kind of a redundancy because things get evaluated by the FinCom and by the select board, and that was the reason to think about maybe it's.
Well, I was talking to my counterpart in Merrimack just last week, and she said, because we were talking about the change from threshold from 10 to 20 in the regional agreement, and she said Merrimack has a capital committee on paper, but they haven't actually appointed one for many years because they handle it otherwise. I think they prepare it at staff level and it goes through the select board and the FinCom. So there's different ways to handle it, but one way or the other, you know.
But just my final comment is, what does the ranking of something, this thing came in third, this thing came in fourth, does that have any actual meaning? Because people usually.
That's a good point, Archie. And you know, I mean, so I've been the select board rep, I guess, every year since I, you know, was elected to the board, and I have yet to see anything rejected or anything, you know, not supported by the capital improvements committee. And yet every year we go through the ranking process. To me, the value of the Capital Improvements Committee, as much as anything else, is to have as much resident, voter, taxpayer visibility as possible of the long-term planning.
That's true, yeah.
To me, that's the value in it. And but
Okay. Infrastructure, item F. So, I don't know too much about that.
I don't know too much about it either. I'll tell you what I do know. So Lieutenant Carifio had received a proposal from a consultant who specializes in evaluating, just like it says, fire department, both capital program and operational structure. And so Chief Dwyer had brought this to me about a year and a half ago, and he'd gotten it from Carifio, and he'd said, hey, this is something that might be worth doing at some point. And it wasn't specifically proposed. There was
Mike said this, or the consultant said?
Dwyer said this.
Right.
Yeah, so this was about a year and a half ago, and he wasn't proposing it for that cycle. And I've talked to him about it, 2 or 3 times since then, and it's not something that he's saying is like needs to happen right away or is overdue or anything, but it's something that might be, useful to us, especially as we look ahead to, where's the town going, where's the department going. So I have a proposal somewhere in my files. I forget the dollar amount, but I know there have been questions. There are questions, I think every time a new fire truck is brought forward of, do we need that fire truck, and so on and so forth. And it just seems like at some point the town may benefit from a outside independent review, whether that's this vendor or some other vendor, but some outside independent review of our fire operations and capital program. Is it, they do an awesome job, no question, but is it sustainable over the long term to have an all-call department? One thing, and maybe it is, that's fine, but should there be more of a daytime administrative presence? And that's something that Dwyer's asked me about once or twice, going back to 2018. During our very first meeting, that was an issue. He said the fire department works great, but from during the day, there's not necessarily a point of contact that's reliable. So not a crisis issue, but again, once something gets on, and once someone tells me about something, I put it on a list, and I might not deal with it for a while, but it's going to be on the list until it's either dealt with or we decide not to deal with it. So that's what that is.
I think he said he was going to look for grant funding for that.
Okay.
Too.
Yeah.
But that's probably moved to the bottom of his list as well, or further down.
Mm-hmm.
I did have one question on the first page, 1D, FY 20, 21, and 22 town. That's a requirement.
By statute. Well, no. Actually, no.
Okay.
It's a requirement to do a town report,
Yeah.
and there's certain aspects that have to be part of it. I think the treasurer, the accountant, there's certain things that have to be in it. The school district report. The town report is more robust than that. Every department has a section. I haven't written my sections, and it's been it's been on my list. I want to, and because I don't want to just dash off. If you read the one I wrote for FY19, it's only 2.5 pages, but it's good, and it is a good. And I wrote the one for 19 for both the select board and the town manager. Mm-hmm. And if you read them, you'll get a good sense of what went on that fiscal year. I want to do something similar, and FY20, that was COVID, and it just didn't get done. And so we did publish a town report, but there was 2. I think I had to pull 3 blank pages, so that when I get around to doing that, I can drop in the pages. And
yeah.
So it's just on my list. It's not. There's no one clamoring for it, but it's the kind of thing that.
Actually, that's not true.
Okay, they're up.
That is the state library.
Okay. Yeah, because we haven't had them printed. We have them in PDF because I don't. It's costly to have them printed.
Yeah.
So, So I've had staff graciously keep those pages so that I can drop them in,
Yeah.
send them to the printer, get them printed. It's, it's the kind of thing that's like on my, it's like performance evaluations. It's something I ought to have time to do. I don't have time to do just because of all the other work I do. So
Okay.
it's, but they're not done, and it's been on my list for every day since. I'm well aware it's not done, yes. But I figure each of those will take me 2 to 3 hours, probably maybe more, to do them properly.
So do you feel like you can't do FY22 until you've gone back and done the prior
No,
ones?
I could do FY22.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I could. It wouldn't. Yeah, because I don't want to. I mean, it's right. It's become a log jam, and
Don't think about it.
Yeah, sorry to
Don't
bring it
think
up, I
about
just
it.
didn't know what it was.
I hope you're not waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
no, but
Angus is,
But actually,
Angus
it's
is
funny
70.
you mentioned
I know, I wish
the
I.
FY19 one. I was, of course, we were short-staffed at that point, but I was up in Maine on vacation in a hotel well past midnight. It was 3 in the morning, and I was editing the FY19 town report because that was the only way it was going to get printed in people's hands by town meeting. I remember that really well. I was sending proofs to they had shipped it to my hotel up in Maine by overnight. I mean, it was very
That's
dramatic.
nuts.
So, yeah, it's these things that are kind of like should be routine haven't been routine because we're backlogged, or we have been. We still are, but we really were at certain times. So.
Okay, I got two more on page 4. Okay, K and L.
Yep. I put these on because they were on, when Leah left, she had these on her list.
That is something the planning board is working on.
Right.
the accessory
So I was,
dwelling.
they're not anything I'm involved with, and this project list isn't really intended to be things just that I'm involved with. It's intended to be more global, but I wanted to include it, first of all, because it was on her list, but also because I know this board, your board, I believe feels pretty strongly on a couple of these issues, what relative to planning board items that you, I believe, would like the planning board to prioritize.
So I don't even know what OSPD means.
Open space
Planning and preservation development. There's some issues to do with how the density is calculated and whether there's sufficient incentives in there to entice applicants to do that instead of a conventional subdivision. I believe those are the key issues. So if your board wanted to, be more proactive about saying to the planning board, hey guys, this is what we think is your top 5 issues. And let's say ground mounted solar bylaw is one of those, or let's say something else is one of those. I think it's good for you to know what else they have on their list. Because you might think their issues are really important too, you just don't know much about them. Or you might think their issues are less important than things you'd rather see them work on. That's what those are. I would probably add to that like a home occupation bylaw.
What does that mean?
Basically having a clear process for permitting for everything from home offices to contractors that operate out of a side yard. We did a really good bylaw up in my last town where we have a really top-notch town planner, and it's really clear. It's the best one I've seen, and I sent it off to Sam and Leah probably a couple of years ago. I think it would be worth looking at here. And what's another planning board?
Every time.
Oh,
Just can't do 2 things.
that's fine.
Okay, so let's, I would say, let's, now that we know what all of these things are, or theoretically, why don't we have a discussion at our next meeting? Are there 10 things that we think are really big and 10 things that we think are we can knock down? I think that would be helpful.
Well, if we
obviously
choose-
we can't do everything.
Right, but
Yeah.
if we choose the top 10, then we don't have to knock anything else out, we'll just focus. I mean, everything on here is worthwhile to do, so.
Correct, yes. But what can we actually get? We can't do all this in one
Right.
year. Yeah.
So just top 10 out of all
Okay,
these categories?
that's a good idea. Okay.
You mean all, just 10 out of all these categories, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
just that gives Angus an idea of what we're thinking.
Well, and
Yeah.
let me give you an example of how I could potentially translate that to something that would actually be meaningful to the public. Is let's say you as a board coalesced around 10 or 12 things that you all felt were really important. One of the things that we've heard is the website, we have a lot of good information, but it's not always easy to find what people are looking for. So if they're really interested in like the Middle Street Bridge, how do we make it easy for them to find that? We could start to build out the website so it does, it creates profiles of some of the top tier projects. The page feasibility study would be one. And start to populate that with information so people who are interested in those issues can kind of make it easier for them to keep up with what we're doing on that. Because we always see on Facebook, I'm almost never on Facebook, but things like, oh, nothing's happening on the Middle Street Bridge. Well, sure it is. It's happening every week. We don't report on it because it's like bureaucratic stuff. It's not tangible stuff that anyone cares about, but there is work toward some of these projects week in, week out. We just don't really report it. So if, let's say we were to build out like dedicated pages for some of these things and start to populate those, that obviously takes staff time. I don't want to burn that staff time and waste that time, and I certainly don't want to try to do it for 50 things because we don't have the time. But if there was a shorter list, we could justify putting some time toward, creating a resource, an online resource, even files organization, try to make the files more complete and consolidated, so they don't have duplication and they're just organized. We can't do that for everything at once, but if there's, a finite number of issues, it's really important. It helps to justify that extra effort.
Do we know how when someone goes and looks, say, at the calendar or something? Do we get a report on hits or no?
I have access to all of that information. I almost never look at it because, I don't know what I'd do with the data if I found it. But yeah, I can get into the back end of our site and tell you how many subscribers we have to the different news and announcements, how many hits different pages are getting.
So I mean, that would
I don't believe there's anyone else in the organization that's able to do that. I'm able to do that.
Okay.
I almost never do. I just run the email utilization reports every month or so, because that I kind of, that speaks to me. Just ran one the other day. So anyway, but yeah, we can get that data. That might be, if we have a new person come in and we want to get them to like actually start tracking that, we can do that.
Well, only that you don't want to go to a lot of trouble and 3 people
Right.
look at it. That's
Well,
what I'm thinking.
Yeah, one thing I talked to Jim about, a while back, we were just kind of kicking around ideas of how can we somehow do as much as we give all this information at these meetings, 40 meetings a year this board meets, and we put a lot of information out there, but we don't pretend everybody's home watching. So how do we do a better job of getting that to people so they know what's going on, they know all the things we're doing on the behalf of the taxpayers. And so I was just thinking maybe we ought to on the website make more use of the blog function. Like if we have a page on the Rock Knox Village Bridge, there's a blog function in our website. We never use it because it would take time to man that and but that might be something we could do for a finite number of projects that are higher profile that people really care about, where, you know, over the course of a week, you might get, you know, people might start to see the site as a dynamic, interactive thing. So to try to create an outlet for those, so they're going to our site, not to Facebook, where I can't justify either my own time or a staff person, like trying to respond to every misinformation.
There's
on
so
Facebook.
much
We don't
misinformation,
have
I just
manpower.
don't,
Yeah,
I don't even,
that's a rabbit hole.
I can't go there.
But if
no.
we could create a center of gravity and people, and then every now and then post that to Facebook, say, hey, if you really want to know what's going on with Soldier and Sailors Building, you know, we're going to update this page at least weekly, you know, but I don't want to do that and then have no one pay attention. Then you're just wasting.
Well, that's where, you know, Archie's
time.
question about the ability to see how
Yeah.
many hits individual
Yeah,
pages get
yeah, we
would
can
be
see
useful if it was
Yeah.
if it was possible to. And I'm not trying to create work,
Yeah.
so but I wonder if there's an easy report that basically gives hits by page in a sequence.
Yeah,
You know,
I think there is.
most to least,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that
I
would
think
that would
that's-
be
I think
very
that's
telling.
Yeah, I think that's, so with the email one, once I let Jake know that that was something that I was gonna keep an eye on, and I try to run those every month or so, he just created a shortcut, put it right on my desktop, so I just double click it, it brings up that report, then I export it to Excel. I might not even look at it, I might just save it till the day later, but it's that easy, it takes me
Okay, so
30
it's
seconds to run that.
not a major project
No,
to do
so,
that.
so if
yeah.
there's a specific custom report or a standard report like that, you know, and we just want to run the same thing every couple of weeks, every month, every 3 months, whatever, that's very easy to do.
But that won't capture the people that can't find what they're looking for and, you know,
No, and
or
what,
who don't feel like it's a dynamic place to,
Right.
But we do know then where people are going now,
yeah.
and maybe we can either direct them to where they wanna be or focus on what they're focusing on and expand.
I had this idea years ago when we revamped the webpage, or basically put it together. I wanted to have people, because we have the same photos that we've had for 5 years. I wanted people, residents, to send in photos of the town, and that becomes the face page for the week, or
That's a great idea.
that's a great idea, yeah.
but it's a lot of work. But it would be fun.
It
Like,
would, yeah.
and someone could say, see, you gotta go to the website, because you see my pictures on there that I took is on there this week, and so
My only concern about the looking at the hits is it's gonna capture, I mean, I'm on our website 40 times a day, 60 times a day. I use it almost like a hard drive, you know, for agendas, for packets, for minutes, you know, even though I might have things on a server.
but so
I'll pull off the
do
website.
I.
Right, so
yeah.
that's, you know, but I guess that's part of the value, but yeah, you're gonna catch.
It's gonna catch our work, yeah.
Capture, it's like a feedback loop where we're like,
So look
it's like a
how
mirror.
much everyone loves what I put in here.
Yeah, but if it's things like you said, you know, agendas,
People love your agendas.
minutes. I mean, those aren't the kind of things that the behavior in terms of maintaining those isn't going to change.
Good point.
What's going to change are the people going to some more obscure page looking for information.
Yeah.
Well, it's always a question of like town meeting. Where can I get information about town meeting?
See, like someone could have that every week.
Yeah.
We could have a new
These are
picture.
new pictures. They've been updated, right?
No.
No,
No,
those are
when
the
we did
ones
the-
we've
when
had.
we did the website refresh, we changed everything, but we didn't change the pictures.
No.
Yeah, they've been
I guess I'm just never on the homepage long enough that I've seen these photos.
But we did some things like we built in the Facebook feed, and we did a lot of things I think to make the homepage more dynamic. But it's still, I agree, the photos we ought to have a rotation there because it just looks stale because it's the same basic
So would it be a lot of work to upload a new photo once
It's
a month?
so easy. No, it's very easy. And,
Okay.
and what you can even do is if you put, let's say you upload 50 and you can have it do it on a random basis that it's gonna just,
Just be scheduled out.
yeah. Yeah, so the photos, it's actually very easy.
Maybe we should have seasonal photos.
Yeah, we could put out a call for.
Like that one's,
And that's the one I always see. I
Yeah.
think that's like
Which one
where
is
it
it? I
starts.
can't-
The wheels.
Oh, it went
Yeah.
by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that it went by, but I couldn't see what it was. I suppose if I
Well,
was,
you know, we
I
could have,
watch it
the board's top 10 or the board's top 20 or something. Top 10 I think is too limiting because there's so much in here, but I just think that we can do a better job collectively letting the public know what is keeping us busy other than the mundane day in and day out stuff. which
no,
does
but
keep us
you're
busy.
like the soldiers and sailors, if you go on Facebook, are like, why can't they make it into a restaurant? I mean, it just, and then people say, oh, how about there's just
Kind of
so
an
much
ask and answer,
misinformation.
yeah.
Just go, we can tell you what it can be.
Yeah, we could build out FAQs for some of these things. We can do all of these things. We just can't do it for every
everyone.
issue.
Yeah.
And so when you're, so
Yeah.
that's how I would see it becoming more actionable, this prioritization exercise. And another thing that crossed my mind was town meeting just 3 weeks from tonight. And there's the board and committee reports. Maybe the board, depending on how this discussion goes 2 weeks from now, if you crystallize on theirs, maybe you guys give a 3-minute report at the beginning of town meeting of like, this is some of our top priorities for the year ahead. You just take the floor and, use that opportunity to help communicate on what you feel is most important.
That's a good idea. Maybe.
Why maybe?
I don't know. Like, you don't want to get people. What do you mean? I thought we were doing that. I'm just, don't get off we don't want them to just disturb the vote on
The problem is that would be really difficult to do in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Because without just giving a thumbnail as to what you were talking about, I mean, most of the topics really require a little explanation and a little background.
That's
And so we could maybe take 30 minutes.
or it could be, through the local cable.
Rick, you could take that.
There was a period of time I did a few of these kind of town manager, briefings.
Yeah.
And I think they were well received. I haven't done more than I think 3 or 4, really because of time. But they tended to cover a number of things. Maybe if we did let's drill down on an issue. I mean, we've talked a little bit about soldiers and sailors, and that at least a number of the people with opinions about what could happen there have never actually been inside the building. And so we've talked about, could we produce a little cable advisory committee, have a little videographer and produce a little 5-minute or 7-minute video of how
They could scan the 8-space parking lot that isn't guaranteed for parking for the building.
right.
They could scan the tight tank.
It takes time to produce all these things, but I think if we have a reliable short, somewhat short list or medium-sized list, that allows me and the staff that I work with to try to focus our efforts on that shorter list. Because what kills us is that we are trying to do everything all at once, and so nothing, is getting more than a bit of time because we're spread too thin.
All right, so should we pick 10, or do you think more than 10 is?
Well, I think if the goal is to arrive at 10 that you all support,
Yeah.
then you're each going to need to pick, 20 or 25 or even more.
Yeah, and I guess I have a question about that. I mean,
And they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, some of these things they're happening, they're going forward.
Well, that was kind of where I was going here.
Yeah.
There are a number of things here that are almost across the finish line.
Yeah.
And I mean, do they deserve a place on a list for? It seems to me they don't. I mean,
Give me
Not-
an
not-
example.
well, the wage and classification study is very close, I think.
Yeah,
It seems to be
it's
like
calendar
we're 90% of the way, we're not
I
way.
wouldn't say that, but it'll be done this calendar year.
Yeah, I mean, we're most of the way. I mean, maybe there won't be that many, but there are a few that are, and I don't mean to trivialize them at all, but they're already, the process is happening. And,
Yes, yeah,
and it's not stopping.
Break your water tank repairs. You guys aren't gonna be doing anything with that. in the
But
sense
there's a lot more
There's
to
a
that.
lot to it, but
No,
it's
but
in
there's-
process. It's going to,
Well, but there's more to that.
it's gonna happen.
Right.
I'll tell you about that one.
Jeez.
You picked the wrong
I'm sorry.
That's right.
Here, what was it? Roof recoating. You're almost done the roof recoating.
They are, actually, yeah, so the public safety building's done, the fourth and final one is this building, it'll be done in about a month, so. But when I met with Wayne, 2 weeks ago to see if we could fast track something to do with, some of it, he said, well, Brian's on the roof for the next 4 to 6 weeks, like, full-time, doing that project. So, so anyhow, which is fine, that's great.
That's why he has that tan.
Yeah.
See, that's not true. I
Right.
yelled at somebody. But tar.
All right,
All right, so we're not picking underlined ones that are a requirement, or are we? That's not helpful, right? If you know that it's.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, okay,
Those are all things that are happening.
okay.
But, actually, something like programming the optimal use of the ARPA funds, as a practical matter, we have to do that, so I underlined it, but it's not like we could wait till, 2 years and all of a sudden we're all like, oh my God, now we're scrambling. That would be a bad idea.
Right.
Like, we need
that's
put pressure on ourselves.
We
even
have
though
to
it's
think
like
about that,
mandated.
that's an important one.
It's a
Right.
very important
Yeah.
one. So, and I think we need to make time for it, and we need to. So it's not. Just,
Okay, it's not cut
You
and
see what I'm saying?
All right, minutes for September 12th, any comments?
Are there any changes?
I didn't have any.
Motion to approve the September 12th, 2022 minutes as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Town manager updates, MOU with MVPC for updates to HPP.
All right, so we've been tracking this one for quite a while, and thankfully it seems that it's going to come to fruition. We've known for a while that our housing production plan would expire at the end of the fiscal year, and so we've been really, counting on MVPC to come through to get the resources they need to help us update our housing production plan. And they have. We've got the resources. They're going to have a kickoff meeting toward the end of the month. I did hear back from the planning board chair that she's content for me to sign this on the community's behalf in the absence of a town planner. So I would intend to sign this and submit this to MVPC this week to kind of formally express our engagement in the process. We've already been telling them for many months that we are going to participate.
So they did receive the second grant that they were waiting on?
I don't know if they did. When I last talked to Gerard, back in September, he said they were going forward with or without that. No, they wouldn't have known if they got the what's the grant we applied for. What's the name of that one? There's the grant we applied.
Oh, the one stop?
Yeah, the one stop.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, they wouldn't know that because they haven't announced. The
okay.
state hasn't.
But they're
announced
going forward regardless?
They're going forward regardless, and he had mentioned to me on the phone back in September that they may ask for a modest contribution. So they have they are seeking $2,500.
Wait, this is for the MBTA?
No, this
No,
is for
no,
the
this
housing
is-
production.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that we applied for one-stop grant for housing
No,
production?
we applied for it for MBTA.
MBTA, right.
They applied for it to update the regional housing production plans.
I see, okay,
So,
okay.
It seems to me when we did this before that, I remember them doing, public hearings kind of, and I think they organized it, and I'm sure that we did, chip in a little when that happened before.
Yeah, so we're talking about having the Affordable Housing Trust kind of take an active role in this.
Okay,
And there were some concerns on the current one that it wasn't realistic for the town, some of the goals that set out for the action plan for this. So I think part of that is because there wasn't an active group within the town that was kind of, working on it and
right,
representing it.
they, everyone provided comments, but they did a lot of the work. Yeah, it was sort of boilerplate.
Yeah.
yeah, that is a problem with these housing production plans, is the state is fairly prescriptive in certain things, certainly the production numbers. Your plan
Right.
has to say how you're gonna produce 0.5% affordable units per year. Whether that's realistic or not, you have to.
So did they,
approve that.
Wendy, just to that point, there's no reason they have to be exactly in concert, is there?
What?
The trust plan versus this document that's for the state's consumption.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a housing assessment needs assessment that's done as part of this that is we would need for our action plan for the Affordable Housing Trust. So the two are related.
Oh, they're related,
Yeah,
but you're saying like some of their goals are impossible. But
Yeah, so there'll be a separate action plan for the Affordable Housing Trust, but part of that is the public outreach and engagement on housing needs. So if it's being done for this, we don't need to repeat it for the action plan.
I see what you're saying.
So
Okay,
our
okay.
thought is we'll be more involved with this, and that will satisfy the public engagement part.
I get you. Okay.
And then we'll have the affordable housing consultant work with us to create
This
our action
will
plan.
this will do some of the preliminary
Yeah.
work for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and then we can also represent the town to try to, make it a more, to the extent possible, more specific for the town's
More
needs.
West Newbury.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, my only concern on that.
Wendy, you could do that in the housing production plan or in the affordable?
No, in the trust.
Affordable housing
In the
trust,
action plan.
action plan, okay.
If these
So
meetings.
that would, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you
No,
off,
that's
but so the housing production plan, because as Angus said, it's sort of somewhat prescriptive by the, by DHCD, can be kind of unrealistic for it. But what the Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan should do then is reflect, hopefully, reality here in West Newbury and what we believe we can actually accomplish.
Or what
I
are
hate to have
some.
to admit that.
Yeah,
But-
or
but-
maybe just what are some other ways we can meet,
Yeah.
the goals or
Yeah.
the intent of the
Yeah.
goals, So,
Okay.
Okay.
but I was just going to say, Angus, that if these meetings are all held during the day, I mean that's going to limit most of the people on the trust have regular jobs, so so we will need to have a town person, like the kickoff meeting in October. That's during the day, I think.
Yeah.
But we can talk about it at the next meeting of the trust and see if there is anybody available to.
Okay. Good.
I mean, typically, what did I tell you the cost that Jennifer told me for this kind of thing? It was like $30,000. Yeah, if we were going to pay for it ourselves, so $2,500 is a good deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we do it through MVPC.
Yeah.
And just try to tailor it as much as possible.
Yeah, and I don't want to be too cynical on this, but one of the reasons, because the production numbers are prescribed by the state. There's no flexibility in that. When you get to the specific policies, that you can customize, to something that makes sense. People might say, well, if the production numbers aren't realistic, why would we do this? Well, the reason you do it, the kind of cynical reason, but correct, is everyone's heard about the safe harbor that you get if you produce enough affordable units, you get a 1 year or potentially 2 year safe harbor. When you read the fine print of the state regs, you only get the safe harbor if not only the production happens, but that the production that happened is consistent with an approved certified housing production plan. And they changed that a number of years ago. It used to be that if the production happened, you got the safe harbor. Then they changed it to require these plans, because if you don't have an approved certified housing production plan and that production happens, but you can't show that it's consistent with your plan, you don't even get the protection.
You don't get any credit.
You don't get any, well, you get the credit, it's still gonna show up in your subsidized housing inventory, but you're not gonna get the 1 or 2 year safe harbor
So the
from
safe
40B
harbor, right.
without it being consistent with an approved plan, which is really, it's just one of the many ways the state forces this stuff on towns. You really have to kind of play ball, or you're leaving your residents, exposed, because then maybe a 40B comes in, you don't have a plan, and now you're getting a 40B, and you're not even getting the protection, the safe harbor. So ideally, you can get some value out of it too, but there are kind of pragmatic reasons why it's pretty important to have one of these.
Yeah.
But I do think the most value we will get will be what we put into it.
So an update regarding the wage and classification study?
So I had sent around, so we've gotten, some updated information, and we have some work to do on that with the proposed groupings and to, review the updated draft job description so those can be sent out. My goal is to send those around to departments 2 weeks from today, the 17th, so that they can review them and get back to us with comments, hopefully right around the 1st of November, so we can then look at the groupings and the wages, and ideally bring forward any proposed wage adjustments for no later than the board's December 5th meeting. That's the target we're working at now. Working toward, I should say. Next one is just informational that COA adopted a wholesale packet of policies and procedures. I just want to make you aware of that.
Are these all new or are they revised?
They're all new.
Wow.
They may have supplanted some, but I don't know if they did. I don't really think they have a lot of formal policies. So it's really
Pretty comprehensive.
It's comprehensive, yeah.
Yeah. So Christine's really done. She's been working very hard down there. Item L, Cable Advisory Committee met Thursday, and they had been presented with a request for use of PEG funds by West Newbury Wild Native. That was approved. And they also, I had asked them to consider approving a process for consideration of such requests, and they were very favorable toward the process. There were questions about First Amendment issues, and so I had put that to town council. We got some advice back on that, and so they'll meet again. They didn't formally act on this, but they are supportive of adopting a process. They just want to make sure they get the language right on any kind of content regulation, which I totally understand obviously the need to get that right. And I didn't know if you all had input that you wanted to share on that.
I just had one mean, they can approve what they want. It just seemed like odd that there's no dollar figure. It could be $1, or they could give away their entire budget. It doesn't say that there's any prescription as to the amount. So I don't know.
Like the size
It
of the project?
just seemed like that. Just seemed curious to me, but it's okay.
Do we know roughly what the total reserve they have is now? Cable Advisory Committee?
I have it in my office, I don't have it in my head.
I guess the PEG fund is what it's called, yeah.
It's healthy,
Yeah,
100,
yeah, I think it's well over 100.
well more than that.
more than 100.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, cause we get quarterly checks from each of the two, from Comcast and Verizon, and they don't expend anywhere near as much as comes in.
It'll be long before we can produce a movie here in West Newbury.
Yeah, I have, Stephanie put together a binder for me and that she updates every month of, the fund balances. I need to start bringing that to the meetings, because the intent was that I would always have those numbers right at hand, and they are on a binder right at the desk.
So Angus, if there's that kind of money around, then if you wanted to have a little video about the
Oh, yeah.
the car post or the bridge or something like that, we could have, someone could even do it professionally. Yeah, we have that seems like a legitimate use of the money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think if there's a, if we want to do a series of informational videos on different projects, I mean, the page feasibility, that's going to really, I think people will really only understand the issues if there's some kind of guided tour of, just to see the boiler and to see some of this stuff that you really can't believe.
So why not? Can we get doesn't even have to be at this point a high school kid. Everyone can do everything with their phone. They can take good videos with their phones. Someone, from one of the schools volunteers to go around with the group when they're in the paid school and video things.
Yeah. I mean, we've, that's, when we do that walking tour, we definitely want to get some footage, that's good.
I'd be happy to walk around that school. Fascinates me.
So yeah, I just wanted to kind of keep you aware of some of what's going on in parallel. But I mean, to me, obviously I understand the First Amendment issues, but I also feel it's one one thing of not airing content, it's another of, there's nothing to say you have to fund something, right? I mean, we might be heavily constrained on what we can and cannot, show, but that doesn't mean you have to fund it. That seems like a more kind of subjective decision that wouldn't seem to be as fraught with First Amendment issues. You don't need to subsidize something.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So, we just got this opinion Friday afternoon, so I haven't really digested it yet. Anything more on that?
No.
MS4, I had sent around the annual report separately. I don't know if you guys went through that or not. It's, some of it's boilerplate, but some of it's pretty interesting. I think we have a lot to be proud of, in terms of what we
So what happens if a community just says, well, we just can't do it, it's impossible?
I think it depends on the community. There's only finite resources of the state or feds to actually do enforcement. They have, you know, it has been known that they have issued 6-figure fines, but I think that's, you know, I don't think anything like that. I don't think we're a small fish, you know. I think if there was a big community that was really flouting this stuff, I think the DEP would be pursuing enforcement.
Actually fine them?
Yeah, they have. Yeah, it was
It's
fine.
they find-
DEP or EPA would.
Well, it's DEP. It's an
okay.
EPA permit, but
Okay.
DEP is their.
Their
there's a
yeah.
deal between DEP and EPA. Some of the states that
They're,
have,
they're acting
yeah, it's
in-
not like that in all 50 states. In some states, the EPA is issuing them. They're issuing the permits, but in some states like Massachusetts, where there's an existing kind of related agency, they're the administrator of our permit, basically. So.
Yeah, it's funny, Archie, it sort of maybe an answer to your question, how some communities are dealing with it. I can't recall who this was or where I ran into them, but it was a guy from another small community somewhere else in the country, and we were talking about, I don't know how we got on the topic of MS4.
Good MS4 talk.
But what? Yeah, I mean, I have no idea how we got there.
Rick.
But what he said is, but what he said is, oh, we're not doing anything with that. I was like, really? He said, yeah, we're just, you know, we don't think
They
we're
don't
gonna
have any
this.
water in their town. It doesn't rain.
Right.
Yeah, it's a desert.
Yeah, I think it was somebody in the West. I don't remember where. So yeah, they're probably in the midst of a 1,000-year drought. I'm not suggesting that we should emulate that, but I was just surprised.
I mean, I can tell you two of the biggest things that, you know,
That's funny.
when our stormwater working group met, you know, a few weeks ago, I think the two biggest things from where we sit that actually do matter, you know, locally. One is this ongoing effort with Horsley Witten to, they brought forward recommended refinements to our stormwater regs, which I think would be improvements, but they also, their scope also includes looking at our zoning, our subdivision regs, and all of our other local regulations to help make it all internally consistent and cohesive, because the stormwater bylaw was not totally done in a vacuum, but it wasn't, all of the cross references weren't made, and we really just need to have an overall framework. So for instance, you might have a section of the subdivision regs that speaks to stormwater that may not be totally consistent with the MS4 bylaw, and so it would be a lot cleaner to just say, to take that out and say, all development that disturbs more than an acre has to comply with the MS4 bylaw, period, and just so it's all cohesive. That work is ongoing, and I do think that once that gets done, that will make the administration of all of this a little bit easier for people like the planner and the building inspector and the conservation agent to some extent. So that's one. The second one is there's a lot of, you know, people like the idea of low impact development and stormwater best management practices like swales and rain gardens and bioretention basins and so forth. The resistance to that in this town at a staff level and in every town I've ever heard of is that where more and more of the development that's being built is not destined for public ownership, it's destined to remain a private development under the authority of a homeowners association. There's a lot of well-justified skepticism as to whether a homeowners association will maintain that infrastructure over the life of the project. And if it doesn't, and now, you know, let's say you have swales and those are designed and those are necessary, and then years go by and they don't know and they start filling them in, and then the stormwater doesn't work and there ends up being real issues. So there's a lot of, we spent a fair amount of time talking about what can we as a town do if the planning board, let's say, was to start requiring some of these LID techniques, how can we ensure that the homeowners association will get the training it needs to know what needs to happen to maintain that stuff over time? Because there's no one here at the staff level who knows how to maintain these things. So anyhow, we've been talking a lot about that, and that's, I think, a very common issue in other towns. It's the long-term maintenance. We had a situation in Marshfield. I felt really bad because we had kind of gone ahead and amended our site plan bylaw and had really strong requirements on stormwater management. And then a landowner, developer subdivided a 300-acre industrial park, and the developer's engineer said all the stormwater is going to be managed per site. You know, it's all going to be with this bylaw. That we had an elected public works board in Marshfield, and they didn't believe it. They didn't believe that that would happen, so they required them to size the subdivision as if all of the stormwater was coming off the site into the road. So there ended up being drain pipes that you could walk through. I mean, they were just the most enormous, and this was for a fairly small town, you know, and I remember I say I felt bad because I did actually feel bad for the developer because they were expending, like basically they were paying for it twice, because now when they sold the lots for this industrial park, they were selling them subject to this bylaw that said all the stormwater had to be managed on site, yet they had to build the infrastructure as if none of that was going to happen. And I was much earlier in my career, you know, I was in my 20s, but I remember saying, geez, these bylaws have real impacts on the costs and what it costs to develop a site. So I don't know. I remember like the size of the drain, the subsurface drain pipes were 6 feet, you know, diameter. They were absolutely huge.
And it would never carry water.
No.
Yeah.
No, because all the sites were going to be subject to the site plan review.
So they're actually all tornadoes. They're tornado shelters.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, they required recharge and you know.
Marshfield's by the water, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so take over any sea
Yeah,
rise.
it's actually prep for sea level rise.
It was crazy.
They do have a serious raccoon problem.
You just put them down there.
Maybe it's raccoon.
Okay, anyone with any items that we need to put on the next meeting? Okay,
No, I move that we adjourn.
second, all those in favor? Aye.